start to turn it around. If we all could love one another, all the world could be as one. Just take time to love one another, all the world could be as one. Black man, white man, standing together, no more fighting to be done. Yellow, red man, dancing together, all the world could be as one.
And welcome to Heal DC. This is Joni Eisenberg. We are focusing today on Gaza to end the genocide of it's now up to more than 10,000 people killed since October 7th, many of whom are being killed with our tax dollars supported by this nation. We're going to be talking about the demonstration, the very large demonstration on Saturday, and we're going to be having two wonderful organizations with us for the hour. And we'll be introducing them in a moment. That is an organization called the Palestinian Youth Movement and Harriet's Wildest Dreams. We'll hear a little bit of music, a little more music from Palestine, and we'll be right back.
على عهدي على ديني على أرض تلاقيني أنا لأهلي أنا فديهم.
And I'm very honored and thankful to introduce our two organizations and three guests. The Palestinian Youth Movement with Miranda, and Harriet's Wildest Dreams with Frankie and Mickey. I'm going to ask each organization to start out with a brief statement about who you are, and then a brief explanation of your organization. So let's start with Miranda. Miranda, we're very honored to have you representing the Palestinian Youth Movement on for the hour today. First, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Hi, yes. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Miranda. I've been organizing with the Palestinian Youth Movement for several years now, and I've been organizing for Palestine for many years. My family is Palestinian from Haifa on my mom's side and also Zimbabwean on my dad's side. And PYM, the Palestinian Youth Movement, is a transnational grassroots organization of Arabs and our youth fighting for the liberation of our homeland. And, we exist because as Palestinians and Arabs in the diaspora, we know that we have a key role to play when our people are rising up against their decades-long Zionist occupation. And our role is really to join them, because when our people are rising up in Palestine and across the Arab world, we rise up in the locations where we live. And we feel the need to demonstrate that Palestinians are committed to our people's liberation from Zionist colonization, and that we've not abandoned our cause or our people, despite Israel's attempt over the last 75 years to fracture us. And also I'll just add that, historically and also today, the diaspora has played a really pivotal role in popular mobilization and mobilizing our communities wherever they exist to advance the struggle. So that's our goal, is really to build community power in Palestinian organizations and community institutions to bring our communities together and educate and mobilize for Palestine, but also work with marginalized groups all over the country to advance for our collective liberation as well.
And we are very proud of you. Maybe give us a sense of how many numbers you are. I know you have chapters or branches throughout the country, and you're certainly very active in DC. So can you tell us, is there a certain number of groups or chapters that you have around the country, and how are you in this city?
Yeah, we have chapters in most major cities in the US and Canada. We have a presence in Britain and Italy as well. We have, hundreds of members all over the country, but more importantly than just our members, we mobilize our base, which is Arabs and Palestinians and other marginalized groups all over the country. And so really our presence is stronger more in the tens of thousands. And we saw at this action in DC on Saturday, 300,000 people from all sorts of from all over the country show up for Palestine. So our numbers, extend beyond just our members, but really into the impact we have on our community and base. And we couldn't do it without the other organizations that we work really closely with as well. And also on this call, Harriet's Wildest Dreams. So,
Yes. And we're going to be, of course, talking about the huge demonstration on Saturday. And with that, I'm very honored and thankful to welcome on board Harriet's Wildest Dreams. And they are on frequently on this show. We're very proud of them. A very strong, important organization. I'm going to ask Frankie to briefly introduce herself, and Mickey, and then we'll come back to you both. You can give an overview of what Harriet's Wildest Dreams is. So, Frankie, say something about you.
Hi, Joni. So nice to be here as always. Hi, everyone. My name is Frankie Sebron. I'm a lead organizer for the Ida B. Free pillar of Harriet's Wildest Dreams. And then I'll kick it to Mickey to introduce herself, and then we'll go into what we do at HWD.
Yes, and I'll just add that Frankie is a native Washingtonian. Okay, Mickey, welcome.
Hi, Joni. It's so good to finally get on here. I apologize. My voice is still a little raspy from the rally on Saturday.
Oh, my goodness. Yep.
But yeah, my name's Mickey. I am the community defense lead organizer with Harriet's Wildest Dreams. I'm a first-gen Ethiopian immigrant. Been in the DC area now for 2 years, and I've just plugged in with HWD and been rocking with them ever since.
Absolutely. And Harriet's Wildest Dreams is an amazingly powerful organization, and a very creative and very committed. So let's just spend a minute or two giving people the overview of Harriet's Wildest Dreams. You're organized in, a very creative way. Frankie, you want to start?
Yeah, I can definitely jump in. Yeah, so Harriet's Wildest Dreams is a Black abolitionist community defense hub. And we fight for all of those who are at risk of state-sanctioned violence. And that can look a lot of different ways. When you think mass protest, that's our community defense. That's what Mickey does. When you think court watch or legal empowerment, that's our Ida B. Free pillar, named after Ida B. Wells. And we do all things that mitigate the harm that's caused by the carceral system. So when you see folks who may, after a protest, get locked up, or anybody who's interfacing the courts, that's what we do in our legal defense pillar. And we can't do anything without education, right? We have to stay abreast on the issues that are impacting our communities. And so there's such a need for our political education pillar, which is our Ella Baker. And y'all know what a powerhouse and a dynamic organizer that Ella was. And her spirit lives on through the work that we do. And it's important to note that we do this work through the spirit of our ancestors. And that is why our organization is named after Mama Harriet. We can't do this work without them. It is the Black radical tradition, and we've picked up the torch. This work is a calling, and we're going to move it forward. We only have our lifetime to work on this liberation, even though it may not happen in our lifetime. That's all we have to work on it.
Absolutely. And for those people who don't know, Ella Baker was one of the founders of the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which has many members, part of the WPFW family. Mickey, did you want to add anything? After this, we're going to be jumping into a discussion of Saturday, the historic march and demonstration that took place, and then we're going to come back after that with a deeper dive into the work being done by the Palestinian Youth Movement and Harriet's Wildest Dreams. Mickey, did you want to add anything?
I think Frankie covered most of it. I think
Yes,
the only thing I would add is we are a
yes,
volunteer-based organization, and we could not do a lot of the work without our base and the folks that constantly show up with us and mobilize with us and are in our spaces and are constantly adding value and knowledge and wealth of lived experience that is reflective of why we do the work.
absolutely. So let's turn now to what happened on Saturday. And I know I was there all day. All of our guests on the line were there at Freedom Plaza, and then later at we marched to the White House. We can give each of us can give our thoughts and also the outcome from this march. I'm going to ask you one thing I'd like to ask, and I'm just actually going to jump in myself. Some of the posters, of course, were extremely powerful and moving. And for those of you who weren't there at the march and perhaps don't go to marches, being there on the ground is a real education and a real blessing, and it's very inspiring. The one poster I want to start with is some sisters were standing behind me for hours and hours holding up this sign: "Dear ancestors, we understand the assignment." And that poster was very, very meaningful for me. I know my ancestors, my parents, my mom, my dad, my sister were definitely there with me, as well as some of our WPFW ancestors: Damu Smith, A.C. Bird, Dorothy Healy. So that was very, very encouraging poster for me to see. But of course, there are many more. We should really start out with saying, of course, that this was the largest protest in support of Palestine in U.S. history. I think some of the regular media was saying 100,000 people. The numbers of people there were just phenomenal. And through my 8 or 9 hours of being out there, I only saw 2 people I knew, which shows you how large it was. But let's start with Miranda. Give your thoughts or your overview of the march on Saturday.
Yeah, thank you, Joni. I mean, it's really clear that we made history on Saturday. People came from all over the country. They took buses, they took cars, planes, they did whatever they had to do to show up and march for Palestine. And it was this really beautiful mass mobilization and show of strength and show of community power and show of grassroots power. And I think what is really special about it is that it's in contrast to everything that the Zionists thought they could do. You know, the Zionists are arrogant. They thought they could genocide Palestinians quietly. They were arrogant. They thought that they would be able to scare us through and fearmonger us. They thought that they would be able to fracture us across the country, and they thought they'd be able to fracture the Palestinian people. But this just goes to show that it's not true, that people are unwilling to be scared. They're unwilling to take this quietly, that they are comfortable speaking out against what the US government is directly complicit in, and that they are going to stand up in support of Palestine and stand up in support of marginalized people and oppressed people all over the world. And I think, you know, to me, that was one of the most beautiful things that we saw. And additionally, there was such a large diversity of who came out in support of Palestine. And I think that shows that Palestine is a cause that, of course, is dear and special to Palestinian people, but people all over the world resonate with the Palestinian cause because it's a case of colonization. It's a case of imperialism, and Palestinian liberation signifies the end of Western imperialism and the end of white supremacy and racism and capitalism. And so people who are not Palestinian, but who resonate with the cause for other reasons came out in support. And we saw many contingencies there, you know, Black contingencies, Indigenous, Latin American, Caribbean, queer, Filipino, Cuban, veterans for peace. You know, we saw people that represent every type of person on earth really come out in support of Palestine because they understand that this goes beyond just Palestinian liberation, but liberation for all marginalized people. And so that was another really important aspect of it. And yeah, I guess I will just leave it there.
Yes, and Miranda, if you had just a comment to make about the reason why the United States is spending billions and billions of dollars to commit genocide, or why are we doing this?
Yeah, that is because Israel is a Zionist state, and Zionism is an imperial political ideology. When the founders of Zionism actually pitched the idea of Israel to the Western powers, they pitched it as a beacon of Western light in a barbaric Middle East. They said, you know, if you give us the land of Palestine, we will make a country for you where you will be able to have access to the Arab world, to the resources, to the people, to have military bases. That was the whole foundation of Zionism. And they were extremely clear about that. Theodor Herzl called the project of Israel something colonial. And that's why he reached out to Western powers to support the Zionist state. And so the US views Israel as an investment. They are able to do weapons trades and weapons deals with Israel, and Palestinians are the test subjects for these weapons. They're able to have access to other other Arab countries and to fracture other Arab countries. And Joe Biden has said very clearly that he has unequivocal support for Israel. And he said, even if Israel didn't exist, we would have to make one. Those are his exact words, because he understands that Israel is an access point to the Middle East for Western countries. And so that's why there's so much support. It has nothing to do with anything besides imperialism and capitalism and global militarization. So that's
absolutely
why other marginalized people and other countries in the global South at risk, because it just increases global militarization.
Absolutely. And you're listening to Miranda with the Palestinian Youth Movement. Let's jump into Harriet's Wildest Dreams with Frankie and Mickey. Your experiences on Saturday, or some of the things that you saw and you felt that you'd like to share. Frankie?
Yeah, I can hop in. What sits heavy on my heart was just the overwhelming presence and solidarity, and the significance of being really what folks are calling the belly of the beast. We're at the seat of power for imperialism, and it just, you know, I could feel the collective grief in the air, and at the same time the revolutionary spirit that just cannot be stamped out, that will not be stamped out. And you know, also the significance of doing that at Freedom Plaza, right across from the Wilson Building, who, if folks are not aware, our DC Council has decided to side with oppression. They have made statements and have backed their support for Israel, and they are showing it very clearly by every single night since October 12th, lighting up the Wilson Building. And so it was very significant for us to be standing on the steps of the Wilson Building to gather, so the world could outwardly see that we stand in solidarity, complete solidarity with our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and just a call for no more. No more. And I'll
That's right. No more genocide in our names. And I must say, standing there by the Wilson Building, I wanted to get around and say a few words to Marion Barry and his statue there, but it was so crowded I couldn't find Marion. But his spirit was there. I'm sure he would be standing up and have something to say against this genocide. Mickey, you want to share anything about Saturday?
Yeah, you know, Saturday was a little overwhelming for me, if I'm being honest. I think that's one of the largest protests I've ever been to, and I've been to so many. But I think one of the big things that stood out to me was how many young people were present, how many children were there. And it gave me hope. It gave me so much joy to see and know that, you know, there are so many generational shifts happening right now, and the overwhelming support for Palestinian liberation and for demanding a ceasefire coming from our younger generation. I even saw a young boy with a poster that said, Black DC boys for brown Gaza children. And it really, really warmed my heart. It was like almost bringing tears to my eyes. But it was a really strong energy and presence. And I really felt like I could express any emotion and rage and anger, but also love and community, knowing that I'm surrounded by so many people putting in the good fight day in and day out. There have been actions happening almost every day the week leading up to this protest at senators' offices, at representatives' offices. So people are being really intentional and really persistent. And now is the time to apply pressure, right, on all of our decision makers, on DC Council, on everybody up on Capitol Hill.
Yes.
Because that is the only way we will get our voices heard. Because you've said earlier, they are trying to almost mitigate the mobilization of how many people truly are in support of Palestine, misrepresenting numbers, cutting off our cell phone service. I was on SOS the whole day.
Right.
I didn't have any service. I couldn't contact anybody.
You couldn't text. You couldn't. They cut off our phone service. You are listening to Harriet's Wildest Dreams, a very wonderful organization that inspires me every day, together with the Palestinian Youth Movement, Miranda, and we are talking about the demonstration on Saturday. We're going to move on now in a minute to take a deeper dive into the work that Palestinian Youth Movement is doing and the work that Harriet's Wildest Dreams is doing. And I'll just say one more thing about the march on Saturday. Of course, I've been to many marches since I was a baby, but this march definitely seemed like a turning point. And it made me think the last time I went to such a big march was at the beginning of the Iraq War, where thousands, hundreds of thousands came out to try to stop that war. But it also reminded me of the demonstrations against the war in Vietnam that got bigger and bigger and bigger until it had to help to stop that war. And this is a genocide. We're going to be out marching. We're not stopping anytime soon. So let's, until the genocide stops. Let's jump back now to Miranda with Palestinian Youth Movement. Share with us a little bit more about the work that you are doing, perhaps in DC or nationally or internationally in the coming weeks. Or anything more you'd like to share about your work.
Yeah, of course. And even, before I get into what our work looks like, I want to back up a little bit just to make sure that everyone listening has, the context that's needed about why we, as, the Palestinian Youth Movement even exist and why there's so many Palestinians in the far diaspora. And it's important to start with, when Israel was created 75 years ago, or what we call the Nakba, as an openly colonial and openly imperial state in which 750,000 Palestinians were exiled and forced to flee from our country, and tens of thousands of people were killed and hundreds of villages destroyed. And it led to what we see now, which is Israel existing as a settler colony, occupying Palestine, and with Palestinians fractured between those that are living within the confines of so-called Israel, some living in the West Bank, and some living in Gaza. And so, our attention and the world's focus right now is on Gaza. But just to be clear, that Palestinians in the West Bank are also living under active occupation, and Palestinians living within so-called Israel are living as second-class citizens. But the context of Gaza is that there are over 2 million people living in Gaza now on a very tiny strip of land, half of which are children. And even before just the last 4 weeks, Gaza has been under siege for the last 16 years. Israel controls everything that comes in and out. They have Gaza on a calorie diet, meaning they only allow how much food that Palestinians can have to not die, but to barely exist healthily. They have not had access to clean water. They are bombed constantly using chemical weapons, farms destroyed, limited access to resources. And so, prior to all of this, Gaza's conditions were already horrible. People call it the largest open air prison in the world. And in the last 4 weeks, Israel has been indiscriminately bombing Gaza as a form of collective punishment, but really the larger plan of complete genocide and ethnic cleansing of Palestinian people. Israel doesn't want Palestinians to exist anymore. And we've seen over 10,000 martyrs in Gaza, 70% of which are women and children, and also mass arrests in the West Bank. The number of people in prisons under military detention has doubled. And there are also children in prisons in the West Bank as well. And the situation is getting worse and worse by the day. And so the Palestinian youth movement, we have been organizing around 3 immediate demands in the short term. The first one is an immediate ceasefire. We need the bombing to stop in Gaza. They're bombing schools, they're bombing hospitals, they're bombing mosques and age-old churches. We also demand that the illegal blockade on Gaza be lifted immediately. There's been no aid or resources allowed to get into Gaza. People are dying in hospitals. People are undergoing surgery with no anesthesia. There's no safe way for women to give birth. And we also, and this one's really important for us in the diaspora, is that we demand the US and Western countries and its complicity in enabling and providing military funding for these senseless massacres against Palestinians. Israel could not exist without the material support of the United States and US agencies, federal governments. And also part of this is the complicity of the US and Western media. The Western media is manufacturing consent for the genocide of Palestinians by spreading lies, by dehumanizing Palestinians, by falsely reporting on what's happening, by not sharing Palestinian stories. They're making it okay for the US to do what they're doing and to support Israel in doing what they're doing in Gaza. And so we demand that the media start acting fairly and conscious and take responsibility for the lies that they're sharing. And so, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, let me just say, I saw a Palestinian activist. I want to just quote him: "The truth is being murdered together with our men, women, and children in Gaza." So that just is what you were saying, that the mainstream media is not telling the truth, it's telling lies. And we're proud of WPFW and Pacifica for getting out some of the truth.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. And it's so important to support the media that is letting Palestinian stories be told. Because the US public, if people understood where their taxpayer dollars were going to, I mean, $14 billion in military aid for Israel, along with $3.8 billion a year in our money that should be going to childcare or healthcare or education, all that's going to genocide. We know that the average person in the US would not support that if they understood the truth. And so that's why we are hoping to get our message out there as best as we can. And outside of the immediate crisis in Gaza, PYM has and other organizations that are advocating for liberation have existed well before the last 4 weeks and will continue to exist after until total liberation. With PYM, we demand a free Palestine from the river to the sea, all of Palestine. We demand a right of return for all of our refugees, an end to the occupation, an end to the border walls, an end to military detention. And that's what we're organizing for. And the way that we do that is by engaging our community and by building grassroots support and grassroots power amongst Arab and Palestinian community, and also engaging our partners in joint struggle, Black organizations, Black liberation organizations, Native organizations, Latinx, Filipino, all marginalized people who are also fighting for their own liberation, because we understand that these liberations are intertwined and that our enemies gain power from each other, but we have more power if we work together. And that we also engage our students and young people, because we know that students spark revolution, as Kwame Ture says, and that students have the ability to overturn the status quo and to bring change. And you mentioned the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee earlier, Joni, who was one of the main leaders in the civil rights movement in the 60s. And we take inspiration from those that came before us, and also the students in Palestine who are leading the struggle there and who are on the front lines. The youth in Palestine are on the front lines, being imprisoned constantly, being tortured constantly, but they continue to fight and resist. And so we support them in their struggle, because it's our struggle here as well in diaspora. And so that's sort of how we operate as Palestinian Youth Movement. And like you said, we've been taking to the streets multiple times a week for the last 4 weeks, but we will continue to do so, because it doesn't just end with Gaza. We will continue to resist until all of our lands are free and our people are free.
Absolutely. You're listening to Miranda with the Palestinian Youth Movement. This is Joni with To Heal DC. We are focusing on Gaza today with two very important organizations, Harriet's Wildest Dreams and the Palestinian Youth Movement. And we're going to turn now to focus on Harriet's Wildest Dreams. I am so proud of this organization. And my mother, who is an ancestor, is very proud of Harriet's Wildest Dreams as well. And I must say, I don't know if this is exactly true, but Harriet's Wildest Dreams is on the ground with what's happening right here in the nation's capital in communities. But they're also perhaps one of the only organizations I can think of in DC who is very much involved with what's happening in Palestine, and it was out there on the front lines. So let's jump now to talking again with Frankie and Mickey. We're going to spend about 5 minutes at least talking about what Harriet's Wildest Dreams is doing around this issue of Palestine. And then you can also share some other things that you're doing. But Frankie, I know that you have quite a number of strategies that you're involved with around Palestine right here in Washington, D.C. So tell us what you're doing in terms of the D.C. City Council.
Yeah, Joni, I'm going to pass this one to Mickey, and then I'm gonna follow up after that.
Okay, great. Hey, Mickey.
Hey, yeah. So, Harriet's Wildest Dreams has been in solidarity and supporting the Palestinian movement for liberation since 2014 during Ferguson with Mike Brown, with our Black Lives Matter movement. And right here in DC, last week, there were a number of actions happening targeting individual senators, targeting individual representatives, and going directly to their offices and being directly in the spaces where these decisions and money allocations are being made, right? Hundreds of Palestinians, Jews, folks in solidarity with this movement staged sit-ins in these representatives' offices. We had a bunch of folks at the Rotunda at the Capitol, I think it was a little over a week ago, engaging in song and prayer and reciting demands for a ceasefire, reciting stories. A big part of this movement is sharing our stories and our histories so that we are informing and reiterating that what the popular media is sharing is not true, that these are real people, right? Hundreds of folks have risked arrest for this. They've said no more. They've said not in our name. And they took a very strong stance by refusing to move and refusing to follow whatever police orders to leave the building, leave the premises, because we cannot be complicit. We cannot allow them to be in control.
Absolutely. And again, clearly state what your campaign is with regards to the DC City Council. Has anybody in the DC City Council spoken up about what's happening and taken a position? Has there been any talk about ceasefire in Gaza within the City Council?
As far as we know, Joni, there has been no official statement. There has been nothing from the council outside of what they have posted on Twitter and Instagram, what we know from October 12th. What we do know is that since October 12th, they have lit the Wilson Building lights as if it's a Christmas tree in support of occupation in the colors of the Israeli flag. And we as DC residents, me being a third generation Washingtonian, we weren't consulted in this. DC residents were not consulted on this very unilateral stance that they have taken. And our demand, our request is that first and foremost, council needs to have a sit down meeting with their constituents, some sort of form of town hall, so we can come in and talk to them so they can hear right from residents what side they need to be on. This is not a both sides issue. It's and that's the plain thing of it. And then even further, to call on a ceasefire, to be the elected officials that you say you are. DC claims to be progressive. They claim to be this liberal place, and you are currently not sitting on the side of humanity. And we say, again, calling for a ceasefire. If you are a DC resident listening to us right now, you can go to bit.ly, that's bit.ly /DC ceasefire now. And that will take you to a form where it will go, it will write the council essentially to let them know that we as DC residents demand a ceasefire. And then
if people have trouble following that, they can at least I know telephone is maybe not appropriate these days, but they can go to info@harrietswildestdreams.org and perhaps ask a question about how to follow up with what you're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I really want folks to know is that our elected officials, they represent us, right? That is their job. That is how they got there. And so if you can say that, or if you can be complicit, rather, in genocide, imagine what's being drafted in the chambers at the Wilson Building. Imagine the type of legislation that they're creating to oppress Black people here in DC. If you cannot take a strong stance and say, we will not tolerate apartheid, we will not tolerate occupation, we will not tolerate these gross human rights violations. If you can't say that with your whole chest, imagine what is happening to Black people here in DC.
Absolutely.
And so I really want folks to really think about that and let that resonate. And to point back to what Mickey was saying, yes, on Friday, we did a visit to some Senate offices. If you live in Maryland, Van Hollen is your representative. We sat in Van Hollen's office for the better of the morning, read our statements, sang our songs, demanded ceasefire. His staffers, basically, they said that there was nothing they could do. They couldn't call him on the phone. They couldn't. So we kept pressing. Even more so, after leaving Van Hollen's office, we went to Warnock's office. We went to Padilla's office. And let me tell you what happened, Joni. They gave us, specifically Harriet's Wildest Dreams, they had the Capitol Police follow us around to every single office. So we essentially had our own police escort security detail around the building when there are all these other folks, but y'all want to follow the Black people around the building. Let's make it make sense. So where was this energy when January 6th was happening? Where was all of this energy?
Absolutely.
But you have 6 Black women walking around the building demanding what we know is right, and you want the police to follow us. We live in a police state. We live in a police state that is akin to exactly what's happening in Palestine, and that's why it's so important for Black people specifically, as Black people, that we show up for Palestine, that we say no more of what's happening in Gaza. And so on Saturday, Black for Palestine, which is a coalition of over 150 organizations and over 5,000 Black activists, artists, scholars, students, they've signed this solidarity letter to Gaza, calling for ceasefire. And so just again, complete support with our Palestinian brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. And before we leave, maybe you can let listeners know how they could see that statement that was made. But I have a recommendation of another office you should go sit in. And I'm sorry to say this, but our own Eleanor Holmes Norton, who is a congressperson who is a very progressive background. She was an activist in SNCC. She was right there in Mississippi. She has not taken a position. So I wonder if Harriet's Wildest Dreams could do some of us a favor and organize a meeting, at least a meeting with Eleanor Holmes Norton to discuss this with her, or if not a protest.
Yeah,
what do
you know, with the Hands Off DC coalition, we have been in communication with Representative Norton, and no, she has not spoken up about this yet. And so that's something that we're definitely keeping in mind. I personally called her myself last week and was like, "What's up, girl?" And it went to voicemail, but this is one of like several different strategies and tactics that we can use to keep up the pressure. Y'all can call, you can stage sit-ins, you can have teach-ins. There's so many avenues and ways that we can continue to put pressure on, so we can stop sending. And let's not call it aid, because it's not aid. We know that the money that's going over is supporting military operations, which is in no way humanitarian.
Absolutely. And this is another example of when the older folks who were involved with SNCC, and we have many SNCC people right here in DC, can work together with the younger folks to make sure at least that there is a real conversation with Eleanor Holmes Norton, because the ancestors are speaking. They do not, Eleanor needs to take the correct position on this one. And I just want to mention another poster that really stuck out to me. Israel and USA are doing what Hitler did to the Jews. And of course, some of people may not remember or really know that there really were 6 million, at least, Jews killed, and many, many others by Hitler. And Hitler is very much on my mind these days. I just keep thinking, is this what it was like when those people were being killed, that so many people stood by and did nothing? So we want to make sure that our WPFW family is standing up for people's right to live and not to be slaughtered. We're just almost out of time. Let's spend we have a few more minutes to kind of wrap up. Let's start with Palestinian Youth Movement. And I did want to ask you, Miranda, I got a postcard at the rally, Shut It Down for Palestine on November 9th. I don't know if that's something that you're involved with, or do you want to say anything about that? I have the poster right here. But whatever you'd like to finish up with, Miranda, in terms of your work with the Palestinian Youth Movement and stopping the genocide.
Yes, I will get into the Shut It Down for November 9th, which is everyone mark their calendars. But before I transition into that, I'll just say one last comment on holding other institutions in DC accountable. Being organizers in the DC area, we have a heavy responsibility because most of the institutions that make these decisions exist here, really in the belly of the beast, the heart of the empire. And so the Palestinian Youth Movement and other organizations as well have been outside the State Department every week, multiple times a week, trying to hold the State Department accountable for their complicity in these war crimes as well. We know that there's been internal division and internal tension in the State Department, with an employee resigning over their complicity in enabling Israel with the billions of dollars, but also the complete lack of diplomacy, or diplomacy only for Israel, that the US has showed. And we see that there's been a lot of dissent from employees in the State Department who feel that they've gone too far. Excuse me. And so we are also outside there because the State Department has the ability to stop military aid if it's violating human rights, and they're refusing to do so. And that's just one of many institutions in DC that are responsible and complicit in the genocide of Palestinians. And so, like Mickey and Frankie said, it's important to continue to show up and continue to put pressure if you're in the DC area, because we have a special responsibility as people who live here. And then for November 9th, that is the Shut It Down for Palestine International Day of Action. Palestinian Youth Movement and National Students for Justice in Palestine, as well as many other organizations, are calling for everybody, no matter where you live, to act for Palestine, whether that be in action or sit-in or protest, boycott, calling representatives, going outside institutions that are complicit in the genocide, and doing whatever you can in your locale to advocate for Palestine and show the world that the action doesn't just end on this weekend. We're going to continue to keep it going and continue to keep the pressure up. So for anybody that'd like to get involved and to see what actions are available in your locale, and if you'd like to plan something, you can go to shutitdown4Palestine.org.
Yes, shutitdownforpalestine.org. I just want to read from the postcard. Now is the time for our mobilizations to grow in size, frequency, and focus, building a political climate that makes Israel's business of genocide unsustainable. We call on movements, organized labor, youth, students, media, and healthcare workers, and all members of society to join us in demanding an immediate ceasefire and lifting the siege on Gaza. So that's, again, Shut It Down, 4Palestine.org. Let's jump back to Frankie and Mickey, Harriet's Wildest Dreams. What are your final words for today, and how can people stay in touch with you? Of course, Harriet's Wildest Dreams is doing many other things in addition to their work on Palestine. So, Mickey or Frankie, let us know a little bit how people might be able to hear more about what you're doing, and perhaps if you want to share anything else about what you're doing this week or next week. Mickey or Frankie?
We actually have an info session coming up this Wednesday at 7:30. If you are interested in plugging in with us, if you are interested in learning more about the work we do and how we are continually showing up for Palestine, you can go to mobilize.us/HWD, and that will show you all of the programming, events, and ongoing actions that we have, and you can register right there. You can also go to our website at harrietsdreams.org and sign up for our newsletter to get updates and info around the work we are doing as well.
And I must say, all the newsletters and information that Harriet's Wildest Dreams sends out is very inspiring and very clear. So what they're doing, again, to stop the genocide in Palestine is inspiring, and the rest of the work that they're doing is also very encouraging. Mickey, anything else you would like to say about Harriet's Wildest Dreams? Maybe not. I'm gonna.
I can hop in real quick, Joni. I just want to let listeners know that on the 8th, on Wednesday, DC Council will be holding a hearing on the Active Act, which is a subset of the Secure DC plan that Brooke Pinto put forth. For those who don't know who Brooke Pinto is, she is the chair of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. And in this Active Act, what it's going to do is do things like expand pretrial detention, which we've been fighting against all summer. It is going to allow police to stop and frisk if they think someone is on probation or parole, and a host of other very like law heavy crime, quote unquote crime heavy legislation. And so folks, we're asking folks, if you want to testify, please get with us. You can email us at idabfree@harrietsdreams.org or hit us up at our website, harrietstreams.org.
Absolutely. And again, some of us who are a little older are very proud of you. Our ancestors are proud of you, and we will continue to stand by and support you as you lead us forward into hopefully one day a world where there is more peace. Anything else you want to add, Miranda, about how people can reach you?
I just wanted to say, Palestinian Youth Movement, we have a website and are on Instagram. And just to make sure that everybody, again, check out the shutitdownforpalestine.org to see how they can engage in an action wherever you are on November 9th. And just thank you so much, Joni, for having me. And thank you, Frankie and Mickey, for being on as well. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thanks so much.
And we're honored to have you. And in a moment, Mickey, I'm going to ask you, if you can, to say a little bit about the outgoing song we're going to play. But let me first, I want to send a special shout out of thank yous to Mike Nacella. We call him Magic Mike because he's so supportive of us as our chief engineer here on WPFW. I also want to thank Mari, who really helps with the Zoom, and to all of my wonderful 3 guests today. I would like to also mention that WPFW did some amazing live coverage on Saturday, starting at 11 a.m. with the Black is Back Coalition, all the way up to 6 p.m. PFW was out there on Freedom Plaza, marched in the White House. At some point, hopefully, that footage will be on our website in the archives. Right now, it just jumps from Friday to Sunday, but hopefully that will be fixed, and those of you can go back and listen on our archives, WPFWFM.org, to hear Katia Stitt and so many others who were on all day long on Saturday, both broadcast on WPFW as well as WBAI in New York. I want to encourage everybody to stay tuned to this radio station who's committed to peace in the world. This evening at 7 p.m., you can listen to Building Bridges, which is going to have an entire hour focused on Palestine and stopping the genocide. And you can also listen to 2 p.m. to the health show. And of course, the best way, one important way to have health is to stop war. We want peace in this world, not ongoing war. We're almost out of time, but we have time to play a little bit more of that song. Mickey, do you want to tell us about the song, the name of it, and a little bit about what it says?
Yeah, I think the song that played earlier, and of course Miranda can probably speak more to it, it's a song that has become very popular on social media, playing behind the protests and the actions for Palestinian liberation. Translated to English, it says, "My blood is Palestinian," right? A song about pride, about belonging to their people. And he says over and over again, my blood is Palestinian. I belong to my people. You will find me on my land. About their religion and the importance of homeland and fortitude. So it's definitely a very moving song.
And the vocalist is Muhammad Asaf?
Correct.
And I don't know if this is the correct way to say it, but it's Dami Falastini. Anyway, you can hear the spirit in the music, and it's part of the many music that is being played now in support of the Palestinian people. Thanks to everybody. Let's hear a little bit about that song, and we stand for peace in the world, not slaughter.
على عهدي على ديني على أرض تلاقيني أنا لأهلي أنا فديهم أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي فلسطيني